Hello, everybody. Thank you for watching The Naturalist Capitalist. I am Reed Coverdale, and we've got the four horsemen back together. We've got Dave, we've got Charles, and we've got Mike. So how's it going, guys? How's it going, Dave?
Awesome. Four horsemen of the apocalypse. Welcome.
How about you, Charles? How you doing?
I'm doing fairly well. Hope everybody else is.
Yeah, doing all right. How about you, Mike? Where are you right now anyway?
I am in Kansas, west of Topeka, and I'm heading east, but I'm not driving, so don't worry about that.
All right, so with our orientation on the screen, we'll be going me, Dave, Charles, Mike, instead of the other way because we kind of got swapped around here. But we're going to try a little bit different form today. Instead of directly asking questions, we're just going to have a bit of an open conversation, and each of us is going to continue it, and we'll see how this works if we're able to pull this off. So I'll just talk about what I've been doing since we all last got together. You know, the election was a disaster no matter which side you were, unless you were a Democrat, I guess. It was a disaster. And there was a lot of turmoil about what happened during the election and then after the election, and then definitely the last couple weeks and couple months. It's just been crazy. I mean, I remember saying that it was more accelerationist for Biden to become president than Trump to get reelected, because a lot of people were saying the opposite. They were saying if Trump wins again, he's going to drive this off a cliff. And I actually thought if Biden becomes president, you're going to see Trump supporters go berserk. You're going to see the left realize that the Democratic Party doesn't need them to win, and you're going to have chaos. And I was kind of right. That's kind of what's happening. Like the far left and the Trump base is kind of imploding. And I've been really kind of evangelizing for libertarianism the last couple months. I've kind of risen up in the ranks of the liberty movement, which is not very hard. It's a pretty small pond. So that actually says a lot more about the Libertarian Party than it does about me. But it's good. My YouTube channel's taken off and getting more high profile guests. So I'm personally doing well, even though the world's falling apart. So how about you, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I went through the various stages of grief and anger, and much like I did when Tulsi Gabbard decided that she was going to endorse Joe Biden, I kind of had the same sort of feeling for a while. A couple weeks ago, I kind of let it all go and said, not much you can do, really, at this point, other than to move forward and to try to somehow bring people together. But I think lately I've become a little bit more picky about what issues I think I should be being a champion of here. I'm no longer really that concerned about what progressives are yelling about anymore. I was trying to be Mr. Balance and kind of be in the middle. But now I think I'm firmly in the libertarian camp. It took me a while to really embrace it, but the more I study it, the more I look into it. And again, it's an evolution. It's constantly learning and trying to understand and trying to get through some of the more difficult issues that you know you're going to be confronted with, especially when you're on Twitter and someone is calling you a name and you're just like, hey, I just want to be free. Just want some peace. I just want some liberty. You know, I want to be left alone. I want others to be left alone. I want the government to get out of my business because they screw things up. And that's been a theme, you know, regardless. I mean, whether you're a Tulsi supporter or even a Trump supporter to some degree, although the Trump supporters were probably just fooled to a large extent, yours truly included, thinking that, hey, this is going to be different. We're going to, you know, he has to rein in government, but it's really about who manages the chaos better. I mean, if you're a Republican, you're a better manager than those Democrats. Those Democrats are managing the chaos poorly, and so we're going to come in and fix it. So what I've been doing is trying to kind of recalibrate my thinking. I've been reading a book by Dr. Ron Paul, which has been kind of liberating because it's bite-sized liberty chapters, and it's called Liberty Defined, and it's just been a great read because it's almost like liberty for dummies. So that's that's what I've been up to lately.
Yeah, so over on my side of things, I've still been kind of carrying on business as usual. I've been trying to talk to people right, left. I've been in touch with still some people who are on the left, and one thing that I'm still trying to work on is getting people, whether they voted Libertarian, whether they might have voted Democrat, Republican, or Green Party, get people who can agree on a core set of issues such as ending the wars, ending the war on drugs, reining in invasive government, protecting our civil liberties, and trying to get everyone on the same agenda. Some people disagree on whether it should be in the Libertarian Party. I think from a strategic point of view, that's definitely going to be the way to go. They've already got a good chunk at the ballot access, and I think it's going to be a lot easier to use a party that's already established as opposed to a party that's getting started from the ground up and really only wants to focus on lefties like MPP does. So that being said, I've been trying to work with people, and there seems to still be a roadblock there. Even when I've gone on people's channel like Frank Analysis, there's still so many people who might agree with me when I bring up all those points. But as soon as you start talking about which government style is going to work better, they start getting adamant. If you defend capitalism in any way, shape, or form, it's either socialism, communism, or no, you don't know what you're talking about. And this is something that I keep trying to tell people, even though that might sound like two drastic differences, we're agreeing on all these things. If you want to take power away from Democrats and Republicans, you're going to have to coalition build. You're going to have to get a group big enough that has the power to vote them out of office. And as long as you continue squabbling about these things we could iron out and debate our differences on once we've taken our country back. If you keep squabbling about that in the meantime, Democrats and Republicans are just popping the popcorn laughing at your bickering because they know you're never going to be able to work together to put them out of office, and they're counting on that. So the struggle continues.
I'm passively and actively watching the recent developments with Wall Street bets. I didn't get involved in the GameStop fiasco, but I'm already heavily invested in silver. And by heavily invested, I mean a small portion of my retirement fund. I'm not wealthy or, I'm not a millionaire or a billionaire. I still work for a living or anything like that. But I'm keen to see what happens with the market on Monday because, rumor has it that silver is going to be the next target after GameStop and AMC and all those other stocks. So we'll see what happens. With regards to what we're talking about with politics, I think I was genuinely excited to see Reed's interview with Larry Sharp. I thought that Larry is a very pragmatic person and he should be more involved in the Libertarian Party and should really set the bar for what we expect from the party going forward, because we need to find a way to grow the movement and not just focus on being an activist party. And, we actually have to be a force to be reckoned with. And the only way we're going to do that is to grow our numbers.
Yeah, that's what I've been all about. I just had Spike Cohen on. That video is uploading right now. And I kind of told him that it seems like he, Dave Smith, and Justin Amash are the three guys who are leading that race. But Larry Sharp, he definitely needs to be up there. He's one of those guys that can connect with everybody. I agree that interview was amazing. I'm also sort of tasked with trying to get Tulsi to join the Libertarian Party. That's kind of become my role. I don't know why it ended up being me necessarily, but I'm working on it. And we've already got a couple people, Spike Cohen and Larry Sharp, both want to talk with her. They're willing to go on her show or have her on theirs. If I knew Thomas Massey, I would be talking to him all day, but I don't. I mean, I think a lot of people wonder why I'm so after Tulsi, but it's because she's the one I know. She's the one I have contacts with. So that's who I'm going after. But if anyone watching this knows Thomas Massey or Rand Paul or Mike Lee or anyone who has like a prayer of leaving the duopoly and joining us because they agree on, even if it's some progressive Democrat who agrees with us on ending the wars, ending the war on drugs and civil liberties or something, like they don't have to be even close to us necessarily. If you can get people to leave these two terrible parties and say, okay, yeah, kind of what Charles is going for, that idea of like, look, there are these certain core things that we have to deal with right now. And then after we deal with them, then we can have opposition on healthcare or UBI or whatever. But while there are lockdowns in all these states, and while we're stuck in our homes and Wall Street's getting bailed out every other week, and we're sending hundreds of billions of dollars overseas, and we're still fighting all these wars, and we the people are, taking it up the Yahoo, that's kind of takes precedence over everything else, just getting rid of these tyrants, and then, we can move on from there. So I don't even think, I do think that the Libertarian nominee for president should be I think he or she should be a principled Libertarian with a track record. But when it comes to vice president or, people joining the party or whatever, like, I don't think it matters as much. I think it really matters that we're working together to end these terrible obstructions to our lives right now. And then once that's done, we can argue about the minutia.
I'm kind of in agreement with you as far as, I often use the term big ticket items. We need to focus on the big ticket items. And I think Charles mentioned a few of those. For whatever reason, this country is just does not have a hunger for the anti-war message, which just blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind because, I'm a bit older than you guys. I grew up when the Democrats used to be the anti-war party. I can remember, Mike Gravel, for instance, is a great example of that. But even into the 1980s, you had guys who were saying, we should get rid of some of these nukes. We should kind of knock this off. And you had a debate. You actually had debate. Now you've got, to not overuse this phrase, but you do have this uniparty out there. And they're basically, one of the first things Biden did when he got up there is like, okay, ramping up Syria again, ramping up our presence in the Middle East. Hold on those troops coming back. We don't, not that Trump brought many of them back, but what he did end up doing is kind of, he plateaued it. He made it so we weren't getting into any more activity, but, we've got all the same people that we had 4 or 5 years ago, whatever, and they're all gung-ho and let's go. And the military contractors, one thing on Wall Street, which you probably should take a look at, Mike, is military stuff like Raytheon and Northrop Grumman and all those guys, because that stock's going to start shooting through the roof. And by the way, and nobody's going to put a stop to that. None of the hedge fund managers are going to come along and say, no, can't trade those because, it depends. If you and I get in on it, then they're probably going to put a stop to it. But if it's the usual suspects who have their fancy schmancy brokers doing all the work for them, that's the other crazy thing. At least the Reddit people were doing their own research and trying to figure out how to game the system. I'm glad they gamed the system, by the way. I think that was a pretty exciting and interesting development that, the little guy in this country overall, whether it's the working class, whether it's, if you're like a Trumper and you hear that, forgotten men and women, all the phraseology that's kind of popped up, the populism, which, is kind of a euphemism in a way for we still spend a lot, but we care about you, rather than we spend a lot and we don't care about you, which has really been the prevailing thing over the last how many decades. You really you do a little history lesson on this and your mind just explodes. You're just like, no, this has been going on. Even Reagan, who is kind of a fiscal conservative, what he was doing was placating the Democrats. We got all this money coming into the Treasury. So, yeah, you guys go ahead and spend like drunken sailors. Everybody's happy. We'll just continue on. And we've had no fiscal responsibility dating back at least a half a century. And you go back there and you see the Great Society. So, I don't know. I want to have hope for my fellow countrymen and women, but I look around, I don't see a hunger for any fiscal restraint. We just print money. We're doing the Keynesian thing, and that's everybody. And you hear arguments, progressives are like, yeah, this works.
Right.
And I'm thinking, if it worked, it would have already worked because we've been doing it for quite some time. That's why your bread went from 12 cents a loaf to, $2.49, depending on what kind of bread you're buying. So I'm kind of going off all over the place here, and I'll send it over to Charles because I'm sure he has a lot to say about this.
Yeah, pretty much just as I predicted. We're getting the result of the brown wave from 2020.
The brown wave.
Joe Biden, like Dave pointed out, he's already starting to ramp up stuff with the military. One other thing, and this is why, and we've all kind of talked about it in our own ways, but I believe there were some shenanigans that probably took place back in November. How much effect that it had, I'm not sure. But there was, the idea that the election system had some ties to Venezuela. And one thing that I always just kind of found that like, I don't know, dude, I really buy that or not? Well, considering that Biden has come out now and said that he recognizes Juan Guaido to be the leader of Venezuela, that I don't think that sits well with them. So if there was, then they got a big punch in the face. I also, I was unfortunate and I didn't the GameStop stock frenzy before it got way up in price. But obviously, if anyone's seen my videos, then they know how I felt about it. Yeah. Number one, I was happy to finally see something like that happen. Number two, it absolutely infuriated me to see these rich people, these hedge fund billionaires, get pissed that they finally took a loss. Everything I've ever understood about the stock market as it is basically a crapshoot. There's no guarantee whether you're going to win or lose. The odds might look good, but there's always still that chance that if you invest in a company, it could take a dive, right? So you're literally gambling. And I don't know of a casino on earth where you can go in and if the odds are good, lay your money down, but then you lose and then you get to whine and cry and someone comes along and bails you out, and then you get to restrict the people that just won from being able to gamble some more. That's absolutely unheard of. I watched some videos trying to understand a little bit more of what took place, and something else that I'm in complete agreement with is that Robinhood should be absolutely shut down as a result of what took place, because Robinhood is essentially acting as a broker. And from all precedent that I've seen, a broker does not have the authority to halt trading of a certain stock. The only people who supposedly are supposed to have that authority is the stock market themselves, like the New York Stock Exchange or whatever. They have the ability to halt the purchase of a certain stock, not a broker. And as other people have pointed out, if a broker had ever done that, they'd probably be immediately put out of business for it. That's so unethical. The other thing is when they halted the purchase but allowed the selling, from my understanding, that helped drive the price back down so that these recent hedge funds who were bailed out could then try to purchase the stocks back because they had to return it from the people that they borrowed it from, which I still don't. I'm still kind of in the gray zone how they borrow stock in the first place. Maybe someone else has a little more knowledge on that, because The stock market's not something I've spent a ton of time researching, but yeah, that was absolutely disgusting. And I think Robinhood should be put out of business ASAP because that's not a free market system at all.
If I could chime in, I don't think Robinhood's going to be here a year from now. I think people are just going to bail on it and find something different, The interesting thing about, the way so the whole GameStop thing, as I understand it, has to do with options and options expiration and another thing called Gamma, which I'm, still kind of leery and still learning about, but because I don't really options, I only buy and sell. But because there was a certain amount of the stock that was short, and these hedge funds were basically betting that GameStop was going to go to zero. So if you buy you borrow money to, basically levering up, borrowing money at almost nothing, use that to short the stock, and then it goes to zero, you're basically printing money. But, if you end up losing because, there were 40% more shorts than there was shares outstanding. So on the day of options expiration, they had to cover. They didn't have a choice. And part of that was, other hedge funds. I mean, a stock that sits around $20 and goes up to 500 doesn't really just happen. I think there were more players involved. I think once other hedge funds saw the writing on the wall that other people were getting involved, they decided to play the game too. So in many ways, these hedge funds will eat their own, and they're not going to care about this other guy going out of business, because it only opens the door for them to take up market share and do their thing. But it's interesting to watch. I like that. In many ways, the things I've seen, there's been a lot of talk about the weakness of the dollar, in related to the crypto world, where they're talking about how, okay, yeah, the dollar is the reserve currency of the world, but it's not going to be that way. It's going to be and now I'm happy to see the focus turning on silver, and the market, or the arguments that they make for cryptocurrencies are the same arguments for silver and gold and other precious metals that that's been money for thousands of years. Why can't it be money again? Governments have a real hard time printing that stuff, and if you can't print money to oblivion, you can't have these endless wars. You can't have the fiscal situation we find ourselves in now, where the only way anything gets done is by printing money. And, I mean, it's a tax, and it hurts poor people more than it hurts the rich people. So the poor keep getting poorer and the rich keep getting richer, and that's the game, and that's the way it's been played for a while. But maybe it's changing, who knows.
What was beautiful to me about this whole GameStop thing, and I just made a video about this that I posted, was you saw literally everybody, conservatives, liberals, communists, socialists, capitalists, libertarians, progressives, just kind of everybody reveling in the fact that, oh, hey, look, we have the power to take on these giants if we want to. And to those who were willing to admit it, it was obvious that a free market actually scares the elite. Like, they like it, the system rigged the way it is, where they're protected. When things start flowing more freely and the people on the bottom start playing their own game against themselves, that's when they shit their pants. And there was that, I can't remember Leon, I forget what his last name is, that hedge fund manager there, like, he was complaining that, this is a way of lazy people getting government checks, taking on the rich. And it's like, I was just like, fuck you, dude. Like, you guys have gotten trillions of dollars this past year, and we've lost our jobs, and they gave hundreds of billions to the military and corporations and then sent us $600. I actually didn't even get anything, but and you're complaining that we're playing your own game against you right now. It was such an obvious display of who the enemy is. This is, and I don't have anything against rich people who get rich on their own merit and get rich on their own hard work. It's us against the cronies, and the cronies are the government and the billionaires that are backing the government and are protected by the government. Like, that is so obviously who we're fighting against here. And Dave and I were actually going to talk about this on a video the other day, but we didn't get around to it. It was the idea of unity, and is it possible? And I think it is, but only with reasonable people. So there are a lot of unreasonable people who want unity, but what their idea of unity is, you are going to agree with everything I want. And I remember seeing this with Jimmy Dore and what's his name, Graham Elwood. They were talking about Tulsi toward the end of her campaign, how she should drop out and endorse Bernie and be Bernie's VP. And if Tulsi were Bernie's VP, you'd see all the right-wing libertarians come over and support Bernie. It's like, what? No, that's not how that's going to work. And that was kind of their idea of what unity was. It was, everyone is going to realize that everything I want is what they also want. I mean, that's not unity. I mean, on the Amash Gabbard page on Facebook, I've kind of laid out what I view as a unity platform, and it's that, what do we all agree on? That's what we're going to unite on. The fringe things that I want, I'm not going to get, and the fringe things that you want, you're not going to get. Like, I would love to abolish the Department of Education. I think we should, I don't think we should have a minimum wage. I don't think that the welfare system really helps people. I think it's a bloated bureaucracy, but I'm willing to table that if we can end the wars, end the war on drugs, end the lockdowns, end all this terrible shit that's going on. But that's unity, like realizing the important things and combining forces on those things. There are people on both sides. It's more on the left, but it's also on the right. People saying, yeah, unity as long as you'll do every single thing I want. That's not possible. Like, that's not unity. That's not going to get us anywhere. I think the Libertarian Party makes the most sense because they can run on those unity issues. They can say, look, this is going to be our priority. We're going to end the wars. We're going to end the lockdowns, end the war on drugs, end the corporate bailouts, end all these terrible things. And then once that's done, then we can kind of go our separate ways and figure out what we're going to do. Yeah, I think you saw unity with the GameStop situation, and it is possible, but people have to realize unity is settling where you agree, not expecting everyone else to capitulate 100% to your side. That's what I would say, at least.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you just said there. One thing that seems to be an obstacle to unity is anyone who becomes an outsider, whether it's Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, a little bit with Donald Trump for some folks who obviously didn't come from within the political establishment, but even more importantly, someone who has ideas that are outside, and that could be somebody I really disagree with, maybe on the far left, but they may have some interesting ideas in the sense that people haven't heard them before, because everyone has to stay in this lane. And now you've got all of these big tech companies trying to make sure that people stay in the lane. They're censoring people now on the far left. We told them this was going to happen. They'll come for the right-wingers first. They'll come for Alex Jones, and they'll come for all of these bomb-throwing type right-wingers, and then guess what will happen? You're all for censorship, and then all of a sudden now they're coming after you.
Right.
So this is a big problem, because say we all got together and had this unity party, right? We said we're going to run a unity candidate. the media would destroy it. The media would be like, oh no, you can't have unity in this country. And you'd be thinking, what next? What can't we have in this country? It's gotten to the point now where if you say, you know what, it's a sunny day outside, well, that's your opinion, you know. We here at Fact Checkers Incorporated saw clouds, so we are going to fact check your sunny day. And this is a thing that just keeps happening. And so structurally, meaning through the media and pretty much all of our communications, that's why Telegram is now taking off as a way to just, hey, I want to send you a message. Okay, I'm going to send it just me to you. You know, you use Messenger. A lot of people hold on to Facebook because of Messenger. Even on Messenger, I've seen things get flagged and little pop-up messages show up. This is getting to be bizarro world, you know, like I guess we still have a lot of freedom because we're all on this call together and we're all talking. But if we're going to reach a bigger audience as far as the Libertarian Party, even if you're a progressive and you just want your views to be heard, we are going to have to find some workarounds, and that's going to take some creativity. That's going to take some entrepreneurial skills. Typically, libertarians are really good at that stuff, but for about 50 years now, they've been sort of behind the curve. So, you know, and I saw that coming into the last election. Okay, we need, and I was shouting, we need other methods. We need, you know, to get this message out there, because ABC News is not going to be covering the libertarian candidate for president. Just ain't going to happen. So we've got to do a lot in the way of communication. I know it's boring. It's not sexy. It's education, communication, and then, you know, infiltration would be another word to use, because you have to get into these places. You know, I wanted to quit Twitter because I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Because you go on there and you'll do the sunny thing and someone will fact check you and throw you under the bus and drive the bus over you a couple of times. And you're thinking, all I did was say a thing that's kind of commonsensical. So I thought to myself, I'm just going to quit again. I'm just not going to do this. But then I thought, you know what? I need to stay. I need to stay. And the reason I need to stay is because we have to fight. They kick us all off. They're going to have to get to the point where they kick everybody off because we're all saying it's sunny outside and they're going to fact check us. At the end of it all, they're not going to have a company anymore because nobody will want to be on that platform because you can't do what you were doing. You know, Jack Dorsey said, hey, this is going to be an environment where you can use free speech. I remember this from years ago. Twitter, the alternative to Facebook, these tweets, they're really cool. You know, you got to stay within a character length, so they're pithy and they're concise, and it causes you to think about what you're going to say, so you have to be even more creative. It's become just such a jungle. And at the end of it all, hopefully the bigger, better mousetrap will be built. I know they took down Parler. That's really frustrating for people who went over there. Gab now is getting all kinds of people over there, but Gab is kind of a weird place. It has a weird feel. It's definitely for those folks on the super right who are saying some crazy stuff. I'm just going to be honest, because I'm over there and I go, okay, this is a little too much for me. I like some of it. I mean, I feel some of it inside, but I'm thinking if we're going to go for unity and we want the free expression, free flow of ideas, and we want to reach people, we don't want to just speak to our little echo chamber, then guess what? We're going to need to do some workarounds. And unless we get that done, guys, I don't know how a third party or just, say, you're for low taxes, say, Reed, you want to tell people that taxation is theft. You can't say that. You can't say taxation is theft because that's racist, probably. I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of what you're going to get hit with. And I don't know how Charles feels about this, but communication is a thing. We got to figure that out before, the next election cycle, that's for sure.
I'll start by saying this. Ordinarily, yes, if a company did, like we're talking about Twitter and Facebook and all those social media companies, if a regular company did what you just laid out, Dave, they would probably go out of business. In this case, they probably just get the GM treatment and receive a bailout. Okay?
Yep.
But that being said, you've got a good point there. And the biggest problem is you're going to have the mainstream media fighting against you. The other problem is it's so obvious how many people we can all agree with. But the problem is getting them to wake up long enough to realize what issues need to be put on the shelf for now. And there's so many people who are just not willing to do that. It's like I said, I don't know if we were on camera yet or not when I first brought this up, but I was just called a bigot last week when we were debating about whether capitalism, a mixed economy, or communism is the better economic style. Okay. And what I pointed out was the argument I was basically getting told from the communism standpoint here is that everyone has the same amount of wealth. No one has to worry about anything. And when I asked, okay, so if everyone's got all the profits in a business, then how is there ever going to be any money given back for the development of new goods and services? And the kind of hinted answer that I received from that was, well, everybody's just gonna have to, I guess, pull together because they all got the money, so they got to put the money back together to reinvest or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but how do you know everyone's gonna do that under their current, way of thinking? Because there's some people who game the system on welfare. They'd rather sit around and let someone pay taxes and pay for their lifestyle, have as many kids as they want. The more they can have, the more money they can collect. I mean, and I know for a lot of people on the left, that's a horrible thing to hear. They call you every name in the book, and that's why I got it. I was called a bigot simply for stating that there are people who game the system, right? And that's like a taboo. Well, I make the argument back to that. What you sound like to me are the people just like Cooperman on CNBC who got peed off that were complaining about the billionaires because there's billionaires who game the system and don't pay taxes. Does that mean they all do it? No. I mean, to be fair to all these rich people who got so offended and clutched their pearls at all this, maybe some of them do play fairly. But there are definitely those who cheat the system. Can you say Jeff Bezos? Okay, the guy didn't just not pay taxes. He didn't pay taxes and got money back from the government. So there are clearly people on both sides of the aisle who are willing to game the system. And the first time you make one little slight criticism that they don't agree with, there's these people who just drop the whole unity thing and start rushing, to get their fists up to duke it out with you or something, right? And to me personally, I think it's the result of mainstream media, a lot of echo chambers. And in order to get people beyond that, you're talking about a reform of the mind. Now, is it possible? Sure. It's definitely going to be a hard battle. And that's why I'm so much behind what Reed started pushing for, which is the Amash Gabbard ticket. I think we definitely need something like that if we stand a chance. And the reason, what really I like about it, is that you've got someone who was once a member of the Republican Party and left. They came to the Libertarian Party. If we can get Tulsi to do the same thing, this is someone who used to be a Democrat and left. Okay, and I think there's going to be a pretty big void there. I honestly was hoping that the people like Mitch McConnell would move forward with their will to impeach Trump. Not necessarily just because I'm like he should be impeached over what happened. I don't really buy into the whole thing about he just egged it on entirely. I think he probably opened his mouth and some people could have interpreted as that, but he clearly said peaceful the day of that whole issue. So that being said, I was just hoping they would pursue it because I knew if they did and they alienated Trump out of the Republican Party, that base would turn on the Republican Party and they're going to be looking for a home somewhere. They're not going to want to vote Republican the next time around. And that is when people like the Libertarian Party need to just hold out the arms. Of course, you don't want the Klan. But
Right.
by no means is every Trump supporter member of the Klan. There's plenty of just hardworking, blue-collar people out there. And that's where the Libertarian Party needs to just hold out their arms and say, come on in. The door is open. And that's why I was just hoping. But unfortunately, it looks like McConnell wisened up, and he's going to play ball the Trump way now. He just voted it was unconstitutional to impeach Trump after hinting around he was open to it about a month ago. So.
Well, I've got some thoughts. I think it's interesting that, Amash Gabbard seems to be something that the four of us all seem to be in support of. I've been, I started getting involved in politics back in 2008 with Ron Paul, and I never thought there'd be an opportunity to try to, after his devastating loss 2008 and 2012, I was ready to hang up the towel and just be like, F politics, I'm sick of this. And, but then everyone was like, well, in 4 years, Rand will run. And we're like, nah, he won't run. He's just a senator now. He's going to stick with being a senator. But he ran. And honestly, I think he had some really good ideas with, getting behind, his whole campaign was going to be like, hey, Republicans haven't campaigned in the inner cities in a very long time, and Democrats just take it out of hand without even thinking about it. Why don't we go to the inner cities and talk about, hey, why don't we set up free market zones where people can start a business without having to get 5 licenses or whatever it is they need to start a business. And maybe a little bit of capitalism can make its way into the inner city, and people can start lifting themselves up by the bootstraps, like we always seem to talk about in capitalism circles. So that's what's on my mind with regards to that. I think it's interesting how the it's just an interesting thing to contemplate. What could have been. I mean, I still come back and I always say, oh, what would have happened if Ron Paul won in 2008? Where would we be today? Would all the troops be home right now? Would we all be living in prosperity? Would we be even concerned about something like COVID-19? I don't know, but it's a fun thing to think about sometime. That's kind of where I live.
Yeah. I just did a video of Spike Cohen about an hour ago, and I relayed to him the heartbreak of trying to work in the two-party system, because I was heavily invested in Tulsi's campaign. I was not heavily invested in Rand Paul's campaign. I wasn't working on it, but I was very hopeful because, someone who's big in the news right now is John Brennan for what he said about libertarians. When I first learned who John Brennan was, it was in 2014 when Rand Paul did his 14-hour filibuster for his nomination to be head of the CIA. That's when I first started following Rand Paul back in 2014. And, I was very hopeful because he had a very, very principled voting record. He was filibustering a nomination like that. He was saying, he sounded a lot like his dad. It was a lot of we shouldn't be giving Israel money, and just crazy stuff for a Republican to say. And then in 2015, when he ran, he started softening his message. He started trying to appease the Republican establishment more than, his dad had done the exact opposite. His dad just ran on a pure message that was blowing everyone's minds. Rand was trying to play ball to gain favor. And we've seen him do that for the last 4 years. And it's just heartbreaking to me because it hurts. He voted for Lloyd Austin for Secretary of Defense. He voted for him, didn't even just not vote. Or vote president or anything. He voted for him. And I remember when he voted for Mike Pompeo, we were saying, well, he's got to do this to be able to play ball with Trump, because if he blocks this nomination, Trump's not going to give him his ear. So now that he voted for Lloyd Austin, are we supposed to think that he's looking for Biden's ear? Because he's not going to have Biden's ear on anything. So, it's just I guess what I'm getting at here is it's depressing to see what the system does to people you admire. It's like that line from The Dark Knight Rises, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And that's Rand Paul for me. He's the best. Don't get me wrong. He's still by far the best senator we have. I'm glad he's there, I guess, but it's just, I mean, it's heartbreaking. And so that, I mean, seeing that happen to him and, you know, seeing what the parties do to people who don't go that way, you know, I would say Ron Paul did not bend his knee. And, you know, I'd say Tulsi, for the most part, until she endorsed Biden, she didn't bend the knee, and she hasn't been since that. You know, she's been bucking everything they do. They demonize you. You know, Ron Paul was a racist. He was a, you know, they found some newsletters that somebody under his name had published, and they tried to frame him as a, you know, a white supremacist. And then, you know, Tulsi, she's a Russian asset. Like they just do anything they can to demonize you if you're threatening what keeps them in power and keeps them their cash flow. So, you know, I I just remember in 2016, you know, I voted for Gary Johnson, even though I wasn't very excited about him. And then after Tulsi dropped out, I was watching the Libertarian nomination process, and, you know, with Hornberger and Jorgensen and Vermin Supreme and Justin Amash, and there was nothing I could do. I had done nothing to lead up to that moment. I'd done nothing to grow the party. I'd done nothing, and I'd spent so much time and energy inside a party that 95% of the people in it and the establishment in it do not want the message that I want. And, you know, I feel like it's pretty much the same in the Republican Party. So I just realized, like, hey, there's this vessel here, and it's, you know, it's not the greatest vehicle ever. It's definitely running on a couple cylinders, and, you know, the tires need to be inflated a little bit, and the engine definitely needs a tune-up. But there is a vessel here for people who care about the things I care about and that you guys care about. So instead of trying to be a parasite in a host that wants nothing to do with us, why not just start a new body, or join, you know, what exists of a body and turn it into something good? And that's why I've been so invested, because in 2 years, I want to have a great candidate to vote for here in Utah's 4th district, you know, who can win a congressional seat. And in 2024, I want to have, you know, same deal, another a senator and a congressional seat and a presidential ticket that I can vote for, that can actually have a fighting chance, because I'm sick of being the underdog. And I'm kind of on my, like, I'm going to give this the next 4 years. I'm going to fully invest, you know, for 2022 and 2024. And if things don't start turning around, like, I had Ryan Dawson on my show last night, and he's for secession already. You know, I might get there. I might be there pretty soon. If we can't turn things around and try to decentralize this mess, I don't see it going anywhere good.
Wow. Yeah. That's, you know, I think I sent you a tweet back, or I replied to your tweet about secession. I said, well, that's the ultimate in decentralization. You want to speed that process up quickly. I know I did a video a while ago about Texas, and there's a real movement in Texas, and it ain't messing around, because I believe there's already been legislation at the state house level there that's been submitted. And they did a poll in Texas. They said something like 60% of the people would consider it, depending on all the details. And to me, that sounds crazy, but in our political atmosphere right now, it really doesn't. It just doesn't. It would feel bizarre to me if it were like 20 years ago. I'd say, well, what do you mean? We're Americans. We stick together. But and you hear that now and you go, we're Americans, we're constantly fighting. You know, the whole premise of Atlas Shrugged, right? I don't know if any of you guys have read the book. It's a bit of a long read, and you have to stick with it. But it's, hey, you guys are all statists. You're all just sucking off the teat of government. And there are characters in the book that represent what it seems has happened and has been happening for at least a half a century, but it's accelerating. And I think putting Biden in the White House was like, you know, putting gasoline on a fire to some degree. It was burning. But, Biden is just 40 executive orders in a couple of weeks.
Right.
Hey, this is out of control. That's why I was never a fan. I mean, if you get your guy in there and you're like, hey, executive order time, and then the next guy comes along and says, hey, we revoke all those executive orders. This is why, Congress becomes irrelevant, right? So the three branches aren't functioning properly, and people are celebrating all of these executive orders because it's the only way you can get things done. A little side note, Reed, you were talking about nominations, right? Or I don't know if Michael was or you were, but in the old days, you're talking about Rand Paul and voting for certain people. In the old days, you got courtesy. You basically got a pass. And when you became the president, you got to appoint the people you wanted to appoint in your administration, and the Congress at large would hit the rubber stamp because it was just a formality. Now you've got this, just perilous process where, and I do think examining somebody's record is a fair thing to do, especially if they've been involved with what you could say is maybe seditious or treasonous activity. You might want to say, hey, this guy here that you're nominating, like you put Janet Yellen in charge of the Federal Reserve, and my head just exploded. It's like, what? Janet Yellen? That name rings a bell. And you go back and you do the research, and you're like, oh, well, she was there the last time we had a financial crisis, and so we're going to go for it again. She was assisting in the financial. Now she gets to be in charge of it. And because she's a woman, we should celebrate because that's all. I know, I'll be called, a hater of women or something like that, or maybe a bigot like Reed. But the point is, I'm sorry, Charles was called a bigot. Reed was not called a bigot.
I was a racist for having Ryan Dawson on. It's a little.
Okay, you were a racist. Charles is a bigot. Michael, were you a white supremacist? Because maybe we can just knock them all off right here.
Michael's a turf. He's like Tulsi. He's a turf, whatever that means. So.
No, Tulsi is a toady. A toady.
Yeah, a toady, too. Yeah, she's a lot of things. So.
Oh, she's a toady. Yeah.
And even
She's
the
a toady.
couldn't figure out what an Assad toady was. It just sounds like a breakfast cereal. But the point of all of this, honestly, is that we are in really a dark period in the country's history. There's no question about it. People are literally talking about secession. They're not messing around. I think you're right, Reed. I think you only have so much time to kind of, turn the boat around. And at least all some of us want to see is, okay, the boat is starting to turn a little bit, but we don't see that. We see full steam ahead. This is the bad Titanic analogy. I mean, we've had this iceberg up ahead for, half a century, if not more, and everybody's just, come on, we'll just print money. It'll be fine. We can just put a hedge about those GameStop people and keep them from wreaking havoc in our nice little, world of, our private casino. Because let's just be honest. Most of what happens didn't always used to be that way. Maybe for 30 years now, though, the Wall Street's been like just a casino. So I think the Libertarian Party, and I'm finding this out and I'm getting more excited about it, but everybody who tells me, I was talking to Stacey Hainline, who's been on my show a few times, and she said, it's a shit show, Dave. Why would you want to get in this? But I'm glad you're here. But, buckle in because you're going to have people who are left libertarians who are going to scream at you. You're going to have people who are right libertarians who I'm probably more comfortable with the right-leaning libertarians, but just that they come at each other and, we need unity in the movement itself, and then we need to be able to attract others in. We are on the ballot. That's the plus. We are on the ballot, unless, of course, John Brennan has his way. So.
Well, yeah, that's definitely going to be the good old possibility there. That I heard what John Brennan said. I thought it was absolutely disgusting. But to the point that Dave brought up, where he brought up Janet Yellen. There was also I forget who got confirmed. I think it was his defense secretary, but there was all this cheer that there was a black
Lincoln.
man who got appointed, right?
Yeah.
And I just love the response to that. Is, you know, I'm sure all the people that we've been hitting with drones and bombs love the fact that there was finally some diversity of color as far as the guy who's going to be launching it at him was concerned. I mean, I'm sure that just made their day. Okay. Janet Yellen, you know, to divert back to the GameStop thing for just a moment, turns out that the company that bailed out the hedge fund that kind of went belly up as a result of GameStop, Citadel, they gave her a lot of money for a speaking fee. About a little over $800,000 for a speaking fee, which we all know what that is. It's a buy-off.
Right.
And she was brought in to be Joe Biden's advisor on what was going on with the GameStop situation and Robinhood and how it should be handled. Now, these are the people who bailed out the hedge fund, gave her a lot of money, and she's the one advising Joe Biden on what's right and what's wrong and what should be going on here. Kudos. I don't know the reporter's name who asked his new press secretary. Her name escapes me at the moment, but I saw the clip. And she asked her, she's like, should she recuse herself from this situation since she's taken money from the people that bailed out the hedge fund and so on and so forth? And the press secretary basically hinted that no, that there's no issue here, and she's very wise in the world of economics. She has a wealth of knowledge, and so therefore it should not be unprecedented that she would be paid a fee for her imparting of her wisdom. And I don't really care if you're the rebirth of Teddy Roosevelt. $800,000 for a speaking fee is a whole lot of money to hear one person talk. I mean, I could see spending that kind of money if we brought maybe the world's most brilliant minds together, but $800,000 for one person to speak, that's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. Furthermore, to give people an idea of what you're probably going to be looking forward to for the next 4 years or however long Joe Biden can keep his office before Kamala Harris takes over, okay? You brought up all of his executive orders. Has anyone else seen the clip that was floating around for a while? You had to turn the volume all the way up.
I saw that.
But Joe Biden literally pulls open the executive order to sign it. And you can hear him mumble, if you turn the volume all the way up, I don't even know what I'm signing. I mean, guys, seriously, all I heard from Democrats is that Donald Trump was unfit for office. Okay, that's all I heard from Democrat voters, Democrat politicians, and I'm not here to defend Donald Trump, but for God's sakes, if he was unfit for office, what do you call a man who is literally at this point reenacting the scene from the Simpsons movie where Schwarzenegger was the president, and he made the quote, I was elected to lead, not to read, and just signs the thing, right? Like, that's literally basically what Joe Biden did, except the difference is Joe Biden wasn't being funny. Joe Biden's just lost his mind to that degree. He's that incoherent. He doesn't even know what he's signing anymore. They could have put anything on that table, and that man just signed it. And that's who you thought was a good replacement for Donald Trump. That's who you're willing to go out and vote for. And so I'm with Reed all the way. The only thing that I'm worried about, if Trump had won, I feel like that, you know, on one hand, you might say that the left would still stick with the Democrat Party to get a Bernie again next time or whatever, right? But at the same time, I was just hoping that maybe people would quench for the third party. The problem, the only thing I'm worried about is I know the left is pretty much, we're going to break away from the Democrat Party over this. My only concern is, what are the Republicans going to do? Who is the next nominee going to be? Obviously, some people have said that they think Trump is going to run again. I don't know. I feel like that's a little bit of a stretch, but I definitely see someone like Don Jr. probably trying to toss their hat in the ring. And we've got to pick off this coalition. And that's going to require the libertarians getting more serious. I know there are some states who are very problematical with getting, third party people onto a ballot for like the Senate and things like that. But I want to see more of it. I want to see more of it from the Libertarian Party. South Carolina could have had someone from the Libertarian Party on the Senate ticket for 2020, and they did not. And that bothers me because Senate seats only come around every 6 years. So that means we're not going to get another chance to unseat Lindsey Graham until 2026. Okay. Now, I don't know when we could I don't know when Tim Scott is up. I'd have to look on Tim Scott, but I'm sure he's going to be up before Graham.
Yeah.
There needs to be a libertarian person on that ticket to run for Tim Scott's seat. There has to be. The congressional seats, they're every 2 years. So definitely be getting people on the ticket. I've said this and I've said this and I said this. And while I would love the Amash Gabbard ticket for the presidency, if it looks like, and this is just me, maybe you guys feel differently, I'd love to see it happen, but I don't want to see it happen unless we get the power structure way in the House and the Senate. If it looks like we need that numbers game, I'd much rather than probably run for a Senate seat somewhere and pick off if we think that could be done that way and take a Senate seat away, because until you take their power game away from them in the House and the Senate, the president would just be a sitting duck. That's exactly what they're going to be. If you need evidence of that, go listen to what Jesse Ventura said that the Democrats and Republicans did to him when he was a governor of Minnesota. They do the same thing to a president. They would gridlock this country into misery just because they know most people blame the president when things are going bad. I mean, we saw that with Trump and COVID, right? And maybe there was some blame to go to him, but I haven't exactly seen that much improvement since Joe Biden took office. That's just me. I don't think I see him doing really anything that wasn't already going on. He mandated masks at federal buildings. Ooh la la. Everyone was already doing that. What's your point? You know what I mean? So that being said, I want to see libertarians take the power away from the branch that really matters. The Supreme Court is going to be another hard egg to crack because you're going to have to wait for appointments to come open, and I'm not in favor of court packing. I think that kind of defies the whole concept. I think you're really starting to make it political. Argument is it's already been made that way, but I don't want to see it be made even more political. So I want the power structure to be taken away in the Congress and the Senate, because the good news is once you have enough power in the Congress and the Senate, if the Republican or Democrat president, if we have to deal with that, gets too far out of line, you've got power. If you get enough of it, you could impeach them or you could force legislation. You're going to put the screws to any remaining Democrats or Republicans that are sitting in that Senate to have to do something, or nothing's going to get passed. You can literally shut the government down and lock it up because you don't want to vote for their lousy spending bills like the one we just saw at the end of last year that gave billions and billions of dollars to the war machine and other countries, right? You could do things like that. And I want to see that happen. Hopefully we can get both. Hopefully we can get the Amash Gabbard ticket and a change in the House and the Senate, but I think that kind of takes the priority.
Can't hear you, Mike. Nope.
Uh-oh.
Still can't hear you.
It's
Bluetooth is dead.
Now I hear you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I was going to say Donald Trump is going to solve all our problems. He's going to start a new Patriot Party, and he's going to split the Republicans, and they're not going to no longer be a force, and then the Democrats are going to take over if they haven't already.
That's your positive outlook for us.
Wow.
Yeah.
In other In other words, the forecast from Mike is Brown Wave 2024 is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Another one.
Mike gave up after Ron Paul 2012. He just doesn't have any faith in anything anymore. I can't blame him at all.
Right? Yeah. That's my 2 cents. I don't know.
Well, oh, go ahead.
I'm just saying, there's things we can do today. Go buy some silver, if you don't like central banks manipulating our currency anymore. Find a way to become an entrepreneur, start a business, learn, if you don't like the fact that the government has taken all our jobs away, find something you can do, there's opportunity everywhere. It's just you need to look around and find it.
Yeah, I think I need to start a Patreon and get a donation for Dave to buy an AR-15 because he needs a gun. So
That's fine.
yeah.
The only problem at this point is going to be finding the bullets for it. That stuff is about as scarce as toilet paper last March.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I guess let's just do closing statements, and that was a pretty good conversation. I like that format more than the structural one. It seemed to be a little more interesting. Yeah, I agree with Mike. Like, do what you can in a party, but also take care of yourselves because the government is not going to be doing anything to make your life better anytime soon. I'm also invested in silver just like Mike is, so I'm excited to see what happens this week. I think the market's opened right now, isn't it? I haven't checked anything since we started the video, but we'll see what happens with silver. And I'll be, I think just as far as Tulsi goes, trying to get her to join, it's not going to fly 2 months before the nomination. Like if this is something that's going to happen, she's got to, we've got to make it obvious that there is a home for her here, but then she has to make a move. She can't wait until 2023 at the end of the year to be like, okay, I'm a libertarian now. They've already tried that. Bill Weld did that. It doesn't work. Like she's got to start moving our way soon. So I think the best way to do that is open channels to her. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on right now, as well as building the party. But stay tuned to my channel. Dave, just where can people stay tuned to what you're doing?
Well, I'm on Twitter, political refugee on Twitter at David Spuria. So that's my name, but also still the political refugee on YouTube. Going to stick with it. It's just I'm kind of with you in the sense that I think we've got to start working together. One of the things that I've realized, especially after talking with Reed and doing some videos recently, is that I think we need to really kind of tag team, work together, work off of each other's work. Reed, obviously, I appreciate you sharing the videos that I posted and getting me into that coveted Facebook group, the Amash Gabbard group, which I think more and more people will find. I think Tulsi Gabbard is a rock star, too, that is beginning to emerge now on the media scene in a way that she really couldn't do when she was just a Democrat. She had flourishes, but then she would run into like an NPR interview or something that would try to derail her. I think she's basically picking and choosing what she wants to do, and she's obviously in more friendly confines when you're talking to Tucker Carlson or somebody who's going to be favorable to talk with and get your message out there. And when you're going after John Brennan, you go up a lot of points with both libertarians and progressives, and that's the kind of unity that we need in order to build a movement. And then tell people, hey, by the way, did you know this is kind of libertarian? And then you hit them. It's kind of like how Christians kind of evangelize. They would then hit them with the hey, do you know Jesus? And so we can do the same thing with our movement and say there's a lot of great stuff going on here. I know it's a little I don't know, what's the word, a little disorganized. We'll use that. But I think, like they say in this, again, another church analogy is, if you don't like what's going on in your church, then, pick up a broom or do something to help the organization. And I think what we need is to recruit people that are willing to get the message out, to talk to libertarians, other libertarians, to defend libertarian ideas. You don't have to be a purist. You can, again, it's kind of like you have to gradually tell people about things that they're not prepared for. People aren't going to probably dig, like taxation is theft and certain things that I see out there, which it's true, but people have been trained for a very long time that they can't do without government. They need the government, and the government used to do a couple of things well. It doesn't even do infrastructure well now, which is really embarrassing. It's really horrible that we're at this point, but that makes for a good inflection point for these conversations that you can have. And even if you're not 100% on board with just, like I told people the other day on Twitter, I said, I would settle for an independent candidate who had some libertarian tendencies, and that might be the future as well. I hear a lot of people who are progressives saying, I'm going to just be an independent. And you might get things like, hey, I don't like the surveillance that's going on. I don't like all this data sharing. I don't like big tech. I don't like some of the things that the government is doing. But we do need to be careful of people who want to take control, who want to take that power and consolidate it. We need to decentralize. And then there are a lot of people that want authority. And that's the thing I think that scares libertarians and a few progressives. But I think the libertarian ideas, they lead to more freedom. And I think that's what you have to sell people. Don't you want to be free? Don't you want to have the right to pursue happiness? So that's where I'm at now. And I'll be your tag team buddy, Reed, going forward.
You got it.
Yeah, I feel the same way. We're just because we're getting the pushback right now when we try to talk to maybe someone on the left, if you experience what I have, I wouldn't fold. It's like you pointed out, Reed. Obviously, there's going to be some people who are just a little too far out there. They're not going to listen to reason. For example, as soon as you bring up the Libertarian Party, there's going to be some people who are so hell-bent against capitalism that they're going to want absolutely nothing to do with it. You might not be able to reach those people, but at the end of the day, I don't think that we need to look at some of those people, or what I'll refer to as the Twitter type. That's not a representation of the rest of this world, or the rest of this country. If it were, Tulsi Gabbard would have done way better in Democrat primaries, right? Yet there were still people like my mom all the way into primary season, or excuse me, what is it? What's it called when they vote during like the primary, the primary elections. We were already well into when South Carolina was going to vote, and I mentioned her to my mom, and she had no idea who Tulsi Gabbard was.
Most people,
you know what I mean? So you can't let these people, when you encounter them, get you to think that there's no hope for bringing working class people all across this country together. Yeah. The one thing, and I heard Dave point out earlier, there's not a hunger for the anti-war message. And that's where we need to be the one to create that hunger. I think you get everyone to agree that the war is a bad thing and that we should be out of it for the most part. The problem is getting them to prioritize that over getting rid of gasoline cars. You know what I mean? The way we're going to have to fight that message is, okay, maybe we got a disagreement on that, but I tell you one thing that will help our climate out, not dropping so many bombs. You realize what dropping all these bombs is doing to our climate? You realize what that's doing to our atmosphere? Right. And so you've got to have these conversations. You've got to defy the mental programming that mainstream media, the Democratic and the Republican Party are doing to people, which is don't talk. Don't talk. And potentially maybe not try to do it so much over Twitter. One big problem is with Twitter, Facebook censors heavily, but you've got more freedom to talk. Twitter limits you to so many characters. And when you're trying to fit things into one little tweet, that makes things really hard. It makes it hard to explain. You start trying to shorten up what you're trying to say. And then in the middle of doing that, when someone reads it, it's almost as if you could be coming across as a jackass. And so then they get pissed. It starts the squabbling. That's really not the best method for communication. There might have to be a lot of face-to-face conversations, 6 feet apart, of course, with a mask. But whatever. I mean, do what you've got to do. You've got to talk to people. You've got to engage. So that's my take. Don't let the negative stuff discourage you. Again, I don't think what you're going to encounter in some of these places on Twitter is a representation of what you're going to find going out talking to your neighbors potentially, or someone that you meet out and you might be able to strike up a conversation or something. But definitely we've got to try. One last point, as I said, libertarians, you got to pump the tires up, tune the engine up, step your game up, and get on the throttle by 2022, 2024, and 2026. We got to start seeing some change here. So that's my final message. Everyone can find me on Twitter at Vigilant into P1, YouTube channel, The Lone Wolf Podcast. And then, of course, if you're looking for how we blue-collar people feel about things, I'm in the process of growing the second one, Blue Collar Review, on YouTube.
Price of silver right now is 28 spot 11. It bumped up over 29 just shortly. If you want some context, 2 days ago it was down in the 25 range, so it's already up $4, which is, I don't know, 10-20%. So that's something. There's something going. I was just watching a couple silver related podcasts, and they're talking about how they haven't seen this kind of excitement since 2011, or back when the price was up around $49, which is right around half. We're right around half of what that is right now. So it's exciting. I'm eagerly watching and waiting and seeing what's going to happen with that. If you want to play, go buy some silver and do what you can. If you want to follow me, I'm at FarminMike1 on Twitter. I'm still working on starting my podcast. It's going to be called I Am Just a Truck Driver. Just search for that. I got a trailer up, but I'm still working on it, but that's me. Anything else?
No, that's it. I would just say, depending on how much silver takes off, you might not just be a truck driver anymore. Same for me. Maybe we'll both, maybe we can both go into podcasting full time. But yeah,
right.
I'll just close with saying, in my interview I just did with Spike Cohen, he said the mistake that their campaign made was that they were trying to educate people during their campaign. That's what we need to be doing right now, is educating people so that we can run a campaign on like 2 or 3 issues that resonate with everyone. Right now is the time for education. So everything that we're doing, Charles and Dave and Mike, like everything on current events, so people know what's going on, because a lot of people have zoned out. They're only watching people like us now because they're so sick of the news. It's important that we keep the message going. So I'll put a link to everyone's channel and everyone's Twitter page in the description. Go follow them, share their content, like their stuff. We will catch everyone on the next show. Thanks, guys.